Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the show. And today we're going to be doing some interesting discussions about the Fatima prophecies and the Fatima Visionaries. And I've got with me today some of the patrons of the site, which you can, if you want to become a patron, obviously have a look in the description below, and you can join us on these sessions. And we're going to delve into this fascinating world of what the prophecies were and the mysterious third prophecy, which wasn't properly revealed. So if you're new to the show, there's three aspects to it, basically. We've got Coffee with Craig that comes on where I talk about current events. We've got the Craig and Jane show, which you'll see on a Friday night, or we've got these, which are more about awareness. So the Fatima Visionaries are fascinating people. They were three kids, basically, that had a vision in Portugal. There was Lucia Santos, who was became the most vocal because she lived longer than the others, and she had her two cousins with her called Francisco and Jacinta Marto. Okay, so the three of them were, in the countryside there, and they had a vision of Mother Mary, a light type of vision. And they were sworn to secrecy and shouldn't say anything. And I think it was Lucia spilled the beans and actually mentioned it to her parents. And they started the local villagers started to take a bit of an interest in this. And there was a lot of controversy because this was something a bit serious. You shouldn't be talking about these things like this. It wasn't the done thing. But the apparitions kept coming, and they came six times in total on the 13th of every month. And eventually the people were getting a lot of interest in this. And one particular time, they said there was going to be a great revelation, a great miracle, what they called the miracle of the sun. And actually, by this time, so many people got interested in this that I think it was up to 100,000 people. I might be wrong with my figure here. People can correct me and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong with this. But it was a huge number of people that gathered together to witness this miracle that the Fatima children were about to reveal, right? And this was on the 13th of October, 1917. And you remember the First World War was going on between 1914 and 1918. And so in Portugal, just like every country in Europe, this was a stressful time, just like it is now for us. And thousands of people basically gathered together to witness the miracle. And what happened is what's called the miracle of the sun, because it was absolutely drenched. It was pouring with rain, and the whole crowd were absolutely soaked right through. It was torrential rain. And what happened is the clouds broke open and the sun appeared, but not just the sun in the normal sense, because what it was described like is that the sun swirled around, and it swirled and actually moved out the sky and moved across the sky and did all these strange things before returning to its original position. And the whole crowd were absolutely wowed by this. And one of the other remarkable things was, I mean, the ground and everything was absolutely soaked through, and yet everybody found, and some of the people that gave descriptions about being there, they all realized after this had happened, after they were entranced by this incredible miracle happening, that their clothes were completely dry right the way through. Someone described it as if their clothes had been made new or sent to the dry cleaners, and this wasn't just a few people. This was an enormous crowd that watched this. Well, the children got persecuted quite a lot by people that were naysayers to this. There was a lot of skepticism about this. I believe at one point, I think they even got put into jail over it, things like this. But eventually, I think they were canonized. I think that's what you called it, and they became revered figures within the Catholic Church. And at Fatima, which is the place, they built a great big beautiful church there, which people go today to seek healing and seek the energy, and to seek, hopefully, to have their own perhaps inner visions of Mother Mary. So the impact of this was enormous, really. I mean, it was considered one of the most significant things to happen within Catholicism, certainly in modern days, and it it fascinated people for years to come. The popes were fascinated by this. Everybody was fascinated by this thing. It hit all the headlines, and the final most important part was that they had visions, three visions of the future, and three visions that were given to them by the Mother Mary. The first one was a vision of hell. So the three children saw visions of hell and people in torment and things like this. Now, I'm personally not a believer in hell, but this is what they saw. They saw a vision of a hell-like state. Then they had a second vision, which we can talk about in a moment with the patrons here, but they had a second vision, which was the end of the First World War, and said this would happen, that there would be an ending to the First World War, which was raging at that time. And they also said that if Russia did not convert to Christianity, and its errors being spread across the world, it would see a destruction of Russia, I think it was, but it would see, because they were foreseeing the spread of communism, basically, in their vision, in the second vision. But then they also had and they also predicted the end of the First World War. They also said that there would be another war to follow it, which was the Second World War. I actually note that they didn't actually say, as far as we know, that there would be a Third World War, which perhaps we can take some comfort from. And then the third vision. This is the interesting one, because the third vision was never properly revealed. In fact, it was so frightening when the popes ever opened it and read what was written, because they wrote it down on paper. They are said to have gone white with fear. A number of popes read the prophecy, and it was sealed up and was given to the Vatican, and with the instructions that it should not be opened until 1960. Now, when it was opened in 1960, we're going to discuss this in a moment, but basically, when it was opened in 1960, there was a lot of controversy about whether the real message was revealed or not. Also, later on, there was a second revisit of this, because part of this vision and prophecy seemed to indicate that a man in white would be shot. And I think we need to expand upon that, but it was taken as being Pope John Paul II's assassination, where they had tried to assassinate him. An Arab, Islamic person, I think it was, shot him, but he only just survived. It was near fatal. So he revealed more about the prophecy, because he felt that that was one of the prophecies that had been given in this third one. There was another guy called Giuseppe that opened up the Vatican vaults and tried to reveal what was in the prophecy. One line was given, which was that Catholicism would continue to survive in Portugal, giving the implication that Catholicism elsewhere might collapse. But we're going to discuss some of these things now with my patrons who are with me today, and we can share some of these thoughts. So that's the basic kind of outline of this, and we're going to have a chat now about some of the implications and a little bit more detail about this, and also the meaning, particularly of the third prophecy, and also some of the other miraculous things that have surrounded some of the Catholic sites. Okay, let's have a chat, shall we? Can I bring Sheila in first? Because I mean, I know you're very keen on this sort of thing. Let's unmute you, Sheila.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you so much, and thank you very much for arranging this, because I'm not a Catholic, as I've said earlier, but I think, like many Hindus, we adore the Virgin Mary. We just adore her. She's a divine mother, as Precious had said earlier on. I totally agree with that.
And
And
not a lot of people know that Christianity is often revered in India, do they? I mean,
absolutely,
I went to Kerala, and it was there was all sorts of shops selling statues of the Mother Mary. I was absolutely amazed, and particularly the Mother
correct.
Mary. Is that the case in India
It
generally?
is. It is. We have a very strong Christian community. My husband's best friends are Christian, and we always celebrate Easter with them. This is the first time I'm not doing this in such a long time because I'm over in London. Uh, Christianity is huge in India, very much so. But coming back to this, the visions, I have been fascinated for a very, very, very long time. And I've done my homework, Craig, today for you. Okay, I did a little bit of homework
Good.
because, and I hope people listening and particularly Precious, you know, can guide me. But I've tried as much as possible to be authentic. So I've done a piece of homework exactly as you said. The third prophecy is the thing which we're all concerned about. Um, I would backtrack a little bit here, and I would say that perhaps there's a hint. Now, when Pope John Paul II was shot, he was shot on May the 13th, 40 years after, I think it's 40 years
For the
after
day. Yeah.
the day of the shooting. Incidentally, that day was also one of the feast days of Fatima. Now, how
Yeah.
can that be a coincidence? To
And he
me,
considered it as very, very significant, didn't he?
absolutely. And one of the incredible things I read this story just today, I was absolutely amazed. I learned about the meaning of the word bilocation. I had to look it up because I couldn't understand it. 4 shots were shot at the Pope by Ali Aja, who was the assassin, and he was, I think, of Turkish origin. We're not sure why he shot him. Some people believe, as you had said earlier on, Craig, that it was the Russians because of communism. And as we all know, communism is essentially atheist. And so this wonderful Pope was, you know, bringing people back into the fold. And perhaps the Russians didn't like that.
Well, the Fatima
Interesting.
Visionaries did have a whole big thing about Russia, didn't they? They said
That's
the
right.
world would come to crisis if Russia did not convert to Christianity.
Absolutely. And Mary says, unless you consecrate to my sacred heart. That's exactly how she describes it, you know? So, anyway, what was fascinating was 4 shots took place. 2 went into the Pope's body, but 2 shot into 2 other people. And one of those people was a nun. And I've written her name here. It was, hold on a second, Sister Rita Montella. And she gives a statement afterwards of a supernatural intervention. Aja, who was the assassin, later on in writing said that when he tried to shoot the Pope, and you have to remember that he was a highly skilled sniper, when he tried to shoot the Pope, he felt somebody moved his arm, an invisible force moved, and he's written this in a statement.
Oh,
She
that's
later on,
fascinating.
yeah, Sister Rita later on went on to say that she knows that she was there with Our Lady, removing that arm, trying to push it away so that maybe the Pope survived. When the surgeons attempted to assist him on the theatre, they actually said that the bullets had just missed the vital organs. Can you imagine how close he was to death?
Yeah, the newspaper report said he was so close to death that it was they were saying it was a miracle that he survived.
Another miracle. You see, I already mentioned 3. I totally agree.
Mm.
And the Pope kept that bullet and he put it in. I've got a picture of it here, but I don't suppose you can see it too
I'll
well.
put a picture up on the screen if I can get one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he put it in Our Lady's crown in Fatima in Portugal later. He actually put it in there. Now, there's just so many coincidences there, but the beautiful ending, the beautiful miracle to this story, of course, this Pope, by the way, Catholics will know he was beatified, he was made into a saint. And trust me, that takes ages. I mean, with Bernadette of Lourdes, it took years for the Catholic Church to accept, to investigate. But here's the miracle. Pope John Paul, of course, went to visit Aja in prison. He forgave him. He asked everybody to forgive him. And according to many writings, Aja eventually later on met the Pope and converted to Catholicism.
Oh,
And
well, I didn't know that. That's
yes,
interesting.
and
I
there
know
is
the Pope's body in the Vatican that you mentioned there too, with the beautification, because
yes,
apparently his body did not. I mean, we
corrupt,
were in the Vatican and they told us, telling us,
correct,
this Jane and myself, the story of that, and
correct.
apparently his body did not deteriorate.
Yeah,
They
so they
say
say you should be incorruptible in the Catholic
incorruptible.
Church. And there are many examples, even Bernadette of Lourdes, her body, has been maybe 150 years. And this is another miracle, to me, it's proof. But yes, I found this information. I knew about this, but I wanted to get precise information. There are some discrepancies. Aja's lawyer says, no, I don't think he would have done that and converted. But here we go. In Catholic News, in 2007, Aja says, I'm looking to have a lady to correspond with me. Obviously, I hope she is Catholic because from May 13th, 2007, I decided to renounce the Muslim faith and become a member of the Roman Catholic Church.
Wow.
What more do you want? I mean, there is controversy on that, but look at all the coincidences. So for me, I mean, that could be part of the third secret. I used to be really fascinated, what is the third secret? But, a lot of the time, even myself in my own religion, we tend to look at the secrets rather than the real message. What did Mary want? She wanted Russia to follow Catholicism, come to my Immaculate Heart, she says. Whether that's really been done yet, I don't think so. Um, could it have been? Some people say also that the third secret is that evil comes into the church. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not a
there's a lot
Catholic.
of controversy on that one, isn't there? Because one of the things that that they believe that the third secret was about was that the corruption in the church, particularly the sexual corruption, as it were. Here's three
Okay.
young children giving a message to the future who are talking about explicit sexual problems in the church. The problem is we have had some um revelations, the 1960 revelations, seem to be pretty shallow. The popes have said that all the revelations have been made, but then obviously people don't trust that because we don't know if the whole thing's been said. That would be something interesting to expand on too, wouldn't it? What really was in that message? Was it about because it was not just about the death of the Pope, which didn't happen, shows we got free will, but it also talked about the complete demise of the church. I mean, Saint Melchi, who made the
Malachi.
prophecies of the popes, Malchi,
Yeah,
who made the
Malachi.
prophecies
Yeah,
of the popes, said there was only 112 popes. So we're likely to see the last pope right now and the downfall of the church right now, at the time of what they see as being the time of the apocalypse. So they'll just add that in because I know that's an
absolutely.
interesting thread on that.
Absolutely. And I do want to say this, and it's very important to say this, when we're talking about maybe the issues in the Catholic Church, in all religions, there are issues. I'm a Hindu. I'm sure many of you have heard about these babas that have been in India that, have fleeced people for their money and done all kinds of dreadful things. Anybody who is like that, in my opinion, is not godly. You can't align yourself to a religion and do something like that. So this is not, for me at this stage, I'm just talking about, the wonderful Virgin Mary and Christ, who, in my opinion, were completely, pure and honest and everything about them. And I think even in this time, if you look at some of the other prophecies related to it, if you look at St. Bernadette of Lourdes, one of the messages that Mary was telling her then, which is sort of like an offshoot of this, was penance. Unless people do their rosary and pray, worse things will happen. And to me, that was an extension of what was happening in Fatima. anyway, I mean, those things, to this day, I find it fascinating. That how did it happen on the same date? How could a sniper who was paid a lot of money, probably by the Russian government, fail to do that? And how was it that he, converted?
Yeah. And there's lots of other prophecies within the Catholic tradition as well, which I find interesting. Padre Pio has
Yeah.
also made prophecies about the future, as did St. John Bosco, I believe, make prophecies of the future. These are, and I'm not Catholic, I don't know much about not being brought up with those things, but I still find it very interesting that the prophecy that is still happens within the Catholic Church. So thanks, Sheila. We'll come back again into you in a moment, I think. And just, I was very interested also, Precious De Vere. Okay. Hang on, I'm going to bring you in. I have to unmute you. Hang on. You need to unmute, Precious. I think you muted yourself. There you go. You're on.
Oh, have I done it? Right. That's better.
Okay. We've got
The third secret.
Oh.
I know what it is. I have to put it up high because I've got cats and they'll
Okay.
jump all over me. So they do what they want here,
Oh, you've got a very low bandwidth. That's why. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm sorry about that. I really am.
But is your surname's De Vere? Is your first name Precious?
Precious.
That's a nice name, isn't it?
Jane always says, "Oh, I like that name."
Yeah.
Doesn't she? I love that name, Precious.
But you've been there, haven't you? You've had some experiences.
I haven't been to Fatima on pilgrimage, but one of our priests have. It's something that we discuss very much, something we discussed in the and at scripture, because it is so profound. And Our Lady appeared to the most poverty-stricken places. I mean, the children, Jacinta and Francesco and Lucia, they were all in poverty. And she will only appear, I feel, to those in poverty because they are so humble. And of course, the children are so pure. Now, with Lucia, she went on to be a sister in the Carmelite order. And she spent the rest of her life until she was 97, I believe, 97 years old, making notes and really reiterating what had actually happened in Fatima. And she still had the messages coming in from Mary to portray to the rest of the world. So she worked through her Bishop Ferreira, explaining what all these things meant. And she was here really, and I'll just read out, for redemption and the power of merciful love. May it put a stop to evil, and may it transform consciences to the Immaculate Heart to reveal all the light of hope. And with the last secret, of course, they couldn't mention the Pope is going to be assassinated. They couldn't mention that. Mm-hmm. And when he was, there was an attempted assassination, as we all know. Pope John Paul II survived. And with that, it then became more open in the church. If they'd have mentioned that before, you would have got all these fanatics going out to kill the Pope. So
I see. So that's why you think it wasn't said, because it could have been a threat. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I never thought that.
No, they weren't sort of hiding things away for the sake of hiding them. But a really interesting thing, the number 13, Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, wrote a marvelous book called The Last Secret of Fatima. And I would recommend that you all purchase a copy and have a read of this, because it gives you so much in-depth knowledge. This is so faceted. But number 13 has come up an awful lot. She appeared on the 13th month. I've made my notes now. I can't find them. She appeared on the 13th month, and they call it the fateful number 13. She appeared on May the 13th in 1917, and she appeared, of course, to Lucia and to Jacinta and Francesco. We find that on May the 13th in 1981, John Paul was shot. He passed away on April the 2nd, but the date adds up to 13 with everything else. And the opening of the canonization proceedings for John Paul were May the 13th again. So 13 comes up an awful lot, and they talk
if you
about...
think about it, 13, that was Jesus and his 12 disciples, isn't it? 13.
Yes, well, 12 disciples, weren't there? And yes, 13.
Precious, you said you had some personal experience of that would be
Our
interesting.
Lady.
Yeah. What was your experience that you had?
She's come through in dreams, and she's come through in visions for many, many years. I had a near-death experience when I was 28. I'm 60 now, but when I was 28. And this was on the 28th day of December.
So what happened with your near-death experience? I mean, were you clinically dead, or how did that occur?
Well, I had a laparoscopy at the time, and I had difficulty with the laparoscopy. And I explained to all the doctors and nurses, oh, you've said this and you've said that. And I just went into the most beautiful experience of lightness. It was beautiful. And she came towards me. She opened out her hands, and she was dressed as a Carmelite, all in brown. She said, you will get what you want. And I didn't know what that meant. But later on, I converted to the Catholic Church after that. And I was given the gift of insight and mysticism. And I was given that gift. And I realise now, looking back, that is what she gave me. But I was also involved in a terrible pile-up back in July 2016 on the M25. And I was stuck by the side of the road, about a foot away from all these lorries coming around. For 2 hours I was stuck there. So I prayed to Our Lady. When I got home, I had an A4 envelope, and this popped out. I don't know if you can see. Our Lady of Fatima.
Yeah.
And that was from Britain Needs Fatima. It's a society that I belong to, because the message of Fatima is needed now more than ever. Now, don't you think that was strange at 2 a.m. when I opened that, and there she was. So I had her beautifully framed, and
you weren't expecting this to come to you?
No, absolutely not. But what the society does is send you things like a calendar, or they might send you a rosary or something like that. I had no idea. And they made a note of this, the pile-up, and how I was devoted to Our Lady. When I knew Our Lady had miraculously saved me, and they made a note of it. So I consider that to be a miracle, not a coincidence. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. Really interesting. So what do you consider to be the message of the prophecies? I mean, they also talk, don't they? Don't they talk about the triumph of the Immaculate Heart? Wasn't that the final part of the final?
Yes, very much so. And what Our Lady's message really is redemption and penance, and realizing what we are doing as a peoples on this earth. We're getting it very wrong, and it's realizing that we're getting so much wrong, and really taking ownership of that, and turning away from the dark into the light. And she talks of that, and she also talks of the rosary and the power of the rosary and prayer. And I think more than ever, we need to make that prayer to make our world a better place, and imagine that light coming in. But I think that's her message, the message, very much so. That's how I interpret it, and that's how Sister Lucia also interpreted that. It's the supernatural, and it's really going within ourselves, the interior of ourselves, to interpret all these things. And again, this book is marvelous because it really outlines so much of what Sister Lucia gave us in her interpretation, right until the day she died. So it really is, with the power of the Holy Spirit, it's conquering individual sin and the sin of the world in all its manifestations. As I was making my notes today, there were 3 words that came to me: behold your mother. They were the last words, or some of the last words, our Lord Jesus said on the cross. Behold your mother. And when he said that, he gifted Mary to us for all eternity. She became our mother. And there is no better divine feminine force in the world than Our Lady. And she is our mother, and we need to go to her, and she needs to comfort us. She needs to understand our sorrows, and she knows sorrow so well. But she is also a time of joy as well. You can go to her in joy as well as sadness and need. But, you know, please ask for her intercession always.
Okay,
always.
well, I think that's really one of the things I'm drawn from this actually is that it's like all of the prophecies and seers from all the different religions seem to be sort of focusing on now, really. I mean, here we are talking about the prophecies from Fatima, which are kind of for now, really. And similarly, with Sheila, when we're talking from the Hindu perspective,
Yes, I love Hindu.
the Puranas are also talking about the coming of the Kalki avatar, possibly now, and then like a rebirth of spirituality is occurring in this world. And it's like all the religions have seen it from their perspective, as it were, but really it's for all mankind, for all beings.
Yeah.
And like the astrologers are seeing it, the people like me as the psychics, some of us are seeing this as well, and all independently, all in our own individual ways. And I think this is fascinating. Jana, I think Jana, there you're a follower of Sai Baba, aren't you? Do I remember?
No, I'm not a follower of Sai Baba, but I've wanted to be here today because I've had like spiritual experience, dream about Mary during really difficult times in my life. And it kind of made me accept what was happening, to not run away from problems, to work through problems. And the dream was really strange because I dreamt that I was painting a mural of Mother Mary. And the next day I wandered into a monastery in the middle of Hollywood, Sin City, Hollywood, California, and saw that same mural in cloistered, it was a cloistered nun. I can't think of the name, Monastery of the Angels. And so it was really a healing for me. And I think what Mother Mary has taught me is how to find God. And I think it's about God being in our heart and letting go of the hardness in our heart where we have hate or anger. And with her assistance, she can remove some of that. And I was working in a hospital. People were praying for somebody that had a brain tumor. And there was such a healing presence being around people praying the rosary. And I believe at that time that hearing that the tumor had shrunk, but it's just, and I've had personal healings around Mary and around the Catholic Church, that somehow there's something like a white light, like this healing energy, this way of taking, recycling things, letting go and letting God. And I know it's, and asking for her help. And I think we need her message more than ever. And I don't know why I sense colors around the church.
So I've muted myself.
Yeah.
The colors around the church,
I mean,
it's like the auric energies, isn't it?
There's a lot of energy around the church. and I don't know if it's about Mary, and it's just very beautiful, and I just feel like we need Mary more than ever.
You see, I think we need we need the power of all the religions, really, because at heart they're all the same, in my opinion. Ultimately, they're all the same. All the religions of the world perhaps have different teachers, but those teachers ultimately are to bring everybody back to divine knowledge. And we've all kind of lost the divine knowledge now, haven't we? I mean, the knowledge that we have now is scientific, it's material. We've become more and more focused on that lower vibration of material world, where miracles don't happen as they perhaps used to. And that's not because miracles don't happen, as perhaps we find out from our own experience, and we might even witness miracles sometimes in our lives, but we lose it because our minds have become sunk into the lower vibrations, you know. And I think this is the problem of the age. The problem of the age is people have forgotten about family. People have forgotten, are completely confused about basic things like their sexuality, and even not even whether a man or a woman. I think that's also shown in perhaps in the prophecies of Fatima, perhaps and the things were implied by the children, in the prophecies of the Puranas, in the prophecies of so many things. There's confusion in the world about who we are as human beings and so forth. And I think that all of these, when we look at them, they're all telling us the same thing. They're saying, wake up, wake up, you know, drop these crazy things. Where the natural state of a human being, the pure natural state of a human being, I feel, is not an evil thing. It's a good thing. Goodness is in the heart of all people. Peace is at the heart of all of us. Light is in the heart of all of us. In fact, the very Godhead itself is in the heart of each of us. And I think that's what they're all doing. So any other thoughts from others here? You'd have to unmute yourselves as you chat.
I have a question, Craig. I heard that, I don't know if this is true, that Mary is associated with the Ukraine.
I don't know. I know there's a lot of Catholics in Ukraine, isn't there? I don't know. I can't answer it.
Precious is saying yes. Precious, she was just.
You'll have to unmute yourself, Precious. I'll unmute you all. Unmute.
Have I done it?
I can't see your picture, so you could welcome to come in if you want to show your
the
picture.
icon I have. No, I had no idea, and I lost a friend, and what I did, I put one of my pictures up, and I don't know if you can see that. It's Our Lady of Ukraine. You probably can't, and I apologise for that. But yeah, very much. The Lady of Ukraine is you know, pray to her for Ukraine, because this is in one of the prophecies, is that Russia must convert, because there is tyranny and there is darkness and there is war. And I think it was foretelling Ukraine. I think that's part of the prophecy, the third secret. You see, as we progress in time, and time doesn't mean anything up there, a blink of an eye is 1,000 years to the Lord. But as we go through the decades, we see this unfolding, don't we? We see wars and we see despair. What's happening in the world at the moment is absolutely heartbreaking. In the Middle East, it's heartbreaking. And again, we've got Ukraine. My heart absolutely bleeds. It really does.
Edgar Cayce, the great seer, said that out of Russia would come a great spiritual revolution. It was something he was very, very adamant about. And, you know, it kind of ties in again with similar things to the Fatima prophecies, doesn't it? That Russia could be the salvation of the world. According to Casey, he felt that Russia would, a spiritual rebirth in Russia would see a complete change to the whole consciousness of the world.
I feel this could happen very much because, of course, Russia has the Orthodox Church, which is very much in line with the Catholic Church. I can't go into that because it would take too long. But it's very much on the Catholic theme again. And I've lost myself a little bit here.
I'll
So
tell you
I
one of
don't
the
know
other
if
things interesting about Russia, actually. I do mentoring for people sometimes, and I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning. I was also do mentoring for a Russian lady from Siberia, and her background has been from the old ancient um, beliefs of Siberia, of the magical side of Siberia. Her mother, her grandmother
any.
were all sort of they worshipped the trees, and they had all the old
Oh, lovely.
amazing things. And she says to me that in Russia there is actually, obviously not common knowledge, but there is in Russia a resurgence of these old ancient ways. And I
Mhm.
think, just as this Catholic and the traditional um Russian church, Orthodox church, as we call it, is a Russian Orthodox church, but also the underlying spirituality of all the old religions too.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes.
like I say, there's one religion that's the religion of love. That's ultimately the heart of all of
It's
it. Is
all we
love.
need to remember.
Yeah, and I
Yes,
think where we
love.
see our commonality, because I think if any religion teaches you to hate another religion, then there's something wrong.
Oh, yes. It's
And
something wrong within you. Yes.
yeah, and it has to be to look at the unity of all religions ultimately, and each person
Mm,
can choose their particular path up the mountain, because different cultures, different personality types, different backgrounds will draw you to a different path, but those paths ultimately all lead to the same goal, don't they?
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, my thought to just look at the end of this wonderful session, if we can all just in our minds imagine Jesus, imagine Mary, they're holding the world, and a beautiful white light coming from them, covering the world, which is dark at the moment, and that white and the light and the love overcoming that darkness. And I use that as a visualization, meditative thought to manifest that. Uh, I think that's so important. If we kind of get that, it helps me anyway to imagine that white light, which is love. It's pure love, covering the world and ridding it of all this hatred. Really,
I
there's
tell you
no
what
love.
might be a nice thing, if people watching this who coming in on YouTube type in the comments your vision of a healing image for the world. Simple
Yeah,
single line, from whatever faith you come from. Type a message of hope for the world. I think that would be nice,
yeah,
because when we do that, we're actually in our own way, we are we are doing a form of healing. In fact,
yes.
healing is going to be something that's going to become part of the Craig and Jane show at the end. We're going to bring that
Oh,
element,
marvelous.
where we can join together and heal, because the world is desperately in need of healing,
Mm,
isn't it?
mm,
And we're seeing such suffering, and whatever faith you come from, I mean, we all our hearts weep for those that suffer, wherever they come from, and we
mm,
do need, we so desperately need um, to awaken to spirituality again. Because, in my
mm.
opinion, it's the only answer. It's the only
It is.
way to counter what's happening. It has to be a spiritual awakening. And I think the way I see it is that all the faiths of the world will, in their own way, awaken,
Mm,
and become more pure, and come back to, hopefully be able to rid themselves of the corruption that is in all the religions, rid themselves of the arrogance that has infiltrated religions, and get back to the true spirituality which we see in all the faiths. And I think the Fatima
mm.
Visionaries were one of those, because it came through children, you know, and
Yes,
and
pure.
it's like the innocence, isn't it? And it's often the
Mm,
case that the great seers, the great teachers are almost childlike, only
yes.
if you become like little children can you enter the kingdom of
And
heaven.
you enter the
I
kingdom
mean,
of heaven.
innocence
Mm,
is what we need with our spirituality. Less
yes,
rules and regulations, and just a direct, innocent acceptance that there is a divinity, and
yes.
we can know it, you know.
Yes, and something else that's just come to mind there. Have we got one foot in the spiritual and one foot in the material, or have we got 2 feet in the spiritual? And I think we need to have 2 feet in the spiritual, more so now than ever before. And
Yeah.
I've seen this unfolding over the last 3 decades, especially in the world.
Yeah,
And it's
I
so
think this we
important
got
to
to
stay on
convert
that
this. We got
path.
to convert the material world into the spiritual, and when the
Absolutely.
material world is brought into the spiritual, as it were, then I believe we will see miracles. I mean, you know, we have things like, you know, like clairvoyance and things which people look upon as being a miracle, but they're just a tiny, tiny little bit of what we're all capable of. And I
Yes.
think we will see a real leap in human evolution and a real
Mm.
leap in human consciousness when we understand that, you know, this divine nature is it is permeating into the world as well, behind all these dark things that we see happening in Gaza and Ukraine and in our own world around us close to home. Well, behind that darkness there is also a hidden light. There's a hidden light that's ready to emerge, and the place, where does it emerge? Within us, doesn't it? That's
Within
where
us, right here. This is where
yeah,
Jesus is.
yeah.
This is home.
Well,
This
from the
is
Catholic
the
point
heart
of view,
of
it's like
everything.
isn't it the heart of Mary they have? What do they call
The
it?
Immaculate Heart of Mary, the
Yeah, the
Sacred Heart of
Immaculate Heart.
Mary.
And that, didn't the Fatima
Mhm.
Visionaries talk about the triumph of the Immaculate Heart?
Yes.
And that is the
Yes.
triumph of the heart, is the triumph of the heart for whatever religious background you come from.
Yes,
It's the same thing,
absolutely.
you know, the triumph of the heart.
She came
Anyhow,
here, you know, she came here, sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
She
go on.
came here during the Fatima, the prophecies of Fatima. She came here to give us that message. And that is the message, you know.
Well, I think it's been very inspiring, actually, Precious.
Oh, it's been
Anything
wonderful.
anybody else would like to finally add? Any last words?
I was just thinking along the same lines that Precious was saying, that for me, the Virgin Mary has given a timeline with all the visions that come. Yes, it could be the 13th, as you said, but of course,
Mm,
other people have given visions as well through her. So there's a timeline. And for me, each thing that comes true is proof of her message. And more than anything, it is the hope.
yes.
You know, at times of darkness, at the time of COVID, at the time of this dreadful wars that are going on, these dreadful wars that are going on, for me, the fact that she's been so accurate, I cannot call it coincidence. I'm sorry.
It's just
As
amazing.
a Catholic, I'm very open in saying I refuse to believe that this is a coincidence. So, you know,
Mm,
she's won me over as far as I'm concerned. And I just feel that there's tremendous hope here. In my own religion, in Hinduism, we take great comfort because the Lord God tells us that whenever there is ardharma, wherever there is injustice, unrighteousness in the world, there's no righteousness. I come down in the form of man and I bring dharma, I bring righteousness in the world. When my father told me this thing, it gave me tremendous comfort. And I think about, you know, wonderful spiritual people who prophesy and say these things. And yes, how pure those children in each time, Bernadette of Lourdes, the
yes.
visionaries, they're from very, as you said, Precious, from very poor backgrounds, absolutely impoverished, starving to some extent.
Mm,
Look at the out of those men have come the message. So
yes.
it gives me tremendous hope for the
This is
future.
wonderful. It's
Well,
wonderful,
I'm
Sheila.
gonna finish us there, if you don't mind, because with time is running short now. I'm just gonna mute you if you don't mind. And I think you are. I wish I could do that with people in real life. That would be wonderful. So I'm just gonna say thank you. I think there was an absolutely wonderful discussion there. Some very interesting things. I mean, I've learned a lot. I hope people that have visited this channel have learned a lot as well, had some inspiration. I think as we on this channel, we are interested in spirituality, we're interested in awakening, we're interested in unity of religions, really, and trying to find those universal things that bind it all together. So do please keep following the channel. Give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. Please put a comment. What do you think about these things? Do you want to put a thought for the world perhaps into the comments, as I suggested before? And Don't forget, there's lots on this channel, so give it a thumbs up, but also follow us. So we'll see you soon. Bye for now.
So do you like what I have to say? And do you like my work? Well, why don't you support my work? Have a look in the description below to go to my website, find out about psychic readings, find out about our Nadi readings with the Indian Nadi Oracle, buy my books, and join my workshops online by Zoom. All there on the website psychics.co.uk.